If you've been following the low FODMAP diet for your IBS-C for months or maybe even years and you're still not getting consistent relief, I need you to hear this. The low FODMAP diet isn't broken. It actually works. You're not doing it wrong, but there is a very specific reason it isn't fixing your IBS-C, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the foods that you're avoiding. It actually has everything to do with what the diet was actually designed to do and what it was not designed to do at all. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where the low FODMAP diet fits into an IBS-C recovery plan, and more importantly, what has to happen alongside the diet and after the diet for it to actually help the gut heal. So I have a free training and a free quiz linked at the top of the description, and they both are designed to help you figure out where your specific gut is breaking down. More on those at the end, so let's get into it. I'm Erin Harner. I'm an Integrative registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in gut health, constipation, and IBS-C. This is video number 5 in my dedicated IBS-C series, and today we're going deep into one of the most commonly recommended dietary approaches for this particular population, what it does well, where it falls short, and how to use it the right way. So let's start by giving the low FODMAP diet its due, because it genuinely helps a lot of people and there's real research behind it. FODMAPs essentially are fermentable carbohydrates. There are certain sugars and fibers that ferment quickly in the gut and produce gas as a byproduct. In a sensitized gut with IBS-C, one where the nervous system is more reactive and where normal gut sensations register as more intense than they would in a non-IBS gut, that fermentation and gas production can actually trigger significant symptoms: bloating, cramping, pressure, and a lot of discomfort. The low FODMAP diet works by temporarily removing these fermentable carbohydrates from the diet. Less fermentation means less gas production. Less gas production means less pressure and less bloating, so it all makes sense. In a gut with visceral hypersensitivity, where sensations are essentially amplified, reducing that gas load can produce meaningful short-term symptom relief. This is very real, and I see this with tons of clients. So yes, the low FODMAP diet absolutely works. For a lot of people in the short term, it can work really, really well. But there is a critical word here: temporarily. The low FODMAP diet was specifically designed as a short-term diagnostic and symptom management tool, not a permanent diet, not a root cause solution, a temporary reduction in fermentable carbohydrates to reduce symptom load while we figure out what's driving the problem. And that distinction between a symptom management tool and a root cause solution is where most women with IBS-C get stuck. The low FODMAP protocol has 2 main phases. Phase 1 is the elimination phase, where you reduce all high FODMAP foods for a period of time, typically 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what's going on and how severe the symptoms are. Phase 2 is the reintroduction phase. This is where you systematically bring foods back one at a time to identify which specific FODMAP categories your gut is actually reacting to, and also which ones your gut tolerates just fine. Phase 2 is not optional. It is the entire point of the protocol, okay? Without reintroduction, you actually have no idea which FODMAPs are actually triggering your symptoms and which ones you eliminated unnecessarily. You're restricting everything indefinitely, including foods your gut was probably handling perfectly well. And here's what happens when that indefinite restriction continues and we don't do phase 2, which is the reintroduction part. The first impact is on your microbiome. So those trillions of bacteria in your large intestine that depend on diverse food inputs to stay balanced and diverse, they start to lose variety. Beneficial bacteria that feed on the very carbohydrates that you've eliminated start to decline, and the gut ecosystem becomes less resilient over time, not more resilient. This is the thesis that I come back to over and over with IBS-C clients. Diversity leads to resilience in the gut. Restriction weakens resilience. We want resilient guts. With the low FODMAP diet, in the short term, removing foods reduces symptoms. Yes, 100%. But long-term restriction often quietly depletes the microbial diversity that your gut actually depends on to function well. This creates a situation where the gut becomes more reactive over time, not less. More foods become problematic. The safe food list keeps shrinking. And the original goal, a gut that handles food without constant management, gets further and further away. My client Susie was a perfect example of this. She had been strictly low FODMAP for years, and by the time she came to me, her safe food list was teeny tiny. She was reacting to things that shouldn't have been causing reactions. Her gut had become more fragile over time, not stronger, because restriction had been slowly depleting the microbial foundation her gut really needed. So I've attended a number of conferences in the last couple years pertaining to gastroenterology and nutrition therapy, and here's something that's shifting in how clinicians are thinking about the low FODMAP diet for IBS. And I think it's like a really important evolution to understand. The traditional low FODMAP approach starts by eliminating everything, all the high FODMAP foods, and then systematically reintroducing over a course of about 10 weeks. But there's a growing clinical conversation among practitioners around a different starting point. And this is what's called a step-up approach versus a step-down approach. Instead of eliminating all of the FODMAP subgroups at once, you start by restricting only the most commonly problematic categories. For many, these are fructans and galactoligosaccharides, or GOS, which are found in things like wheat, garlic, onions, and legumes. And then seeing how the gut responds. Then you build from there, adding restrictions only if specific symptoms indicate they're needed. The idea here with the FODMAP simple type approach is that starting with full restriction when partial restriction might actually achieve the same symptom relief while preserving much more dietary variety and microbiome diversity is a much more sustainable and ultimately more effective starting point for most people. And this is what I've been using in my practice and in my programs for the last couple years. In my own clinical work, this approach reflects what I see consistently. Most of my IBS-C clients don't need to eliminate every FODMAP category. In fact, they have specific trigger foods within 1 or 2 categories, not all of them. And when we identify those precisely through careful reintroduction, they get meaningful relief without sacrificing the variety that their microbiome really, really needs. The goal is always the most varied diet that your gut can currently tolerate, not the most restricted diet your gut will ungratefully accept. Now here's where I want to pull back for a second and look at the bigger picture, because this is the most important thing I can tell you about why the low FODMAP diet alone isn't fixing your IBS-C. Low FODMAP reduces a symptom. It reduces the fermentable load going into a gut that's already struggling to handle fermentation. Yes, that is valuable, but it doesn't ask why your gut is struggling to handle fermentation in the first place. It doesn't address gut motility or how well your gut is contracting and moving things through, also known as peristalsis. If things are moving slowly, fermentation happens regardless of what you eat because food is sitting in the gut longer than it should. It doesn't address the nervous system piece. A dysregulated nervous system, as we covered back in video 3 in this series, is suppressing your gut's ability to digest and move stool through efficiently. Low FODMAP has no mechanism to change that, unfortunately. It doesn't rebuild the gut microbiome. In fact, we just covered prolonged restriction can actively deplete the gut microbiome. And it doesn't address circadian rhythm and meal timing. And the gut clock disruption that keeps IBS-C unpredictable, regardless of dietary quality, is real and really, really important. So to bring it full circle here, the low FODMAP diet is actually treating one variable in a multivariable problem. And in a system as interconnected as the IBS-C gut, treating one variable while the others remain unaddressed will always produce incomplete results. And this is why women who follow the protocol perfectly, who track every food, eliminate everything correctly, do all the right things, can still be symptomatic. Not because the diet failed, but because the diet was never designed to address what's actually driving their IBS-C in the first place. So here's how I recommend using the low FODMAP diet within a broader IBS-C framework, because I do still use it. It's a valuable tool. It just needs to be used as a tool, not a destination. We use it temporarily and we use it intentionally. 4 weeks of reduced FODMAP load to bring symptom burden down and to give the gut a calmer baseline to work from, not indefinitely. Then consider starting with the most problematic categories first. I like to go with fructans and galactoligosaccharides, or GOS, rather than eliminating everything at once. See how your gut responds before restricting further. You may get significant relief from just partial restriction and preserve much more food variety in the process. So do the reintroduction, every category, one at a time, systematically, And this is the step that tells you which foods are actually your specific triggers versus ones you've been avoiding unnecessarily. Most of my clients are surprised by how many foods they can actually add back because they're part of categories that they're not even reacting to. And use the low FODMAP as one layer within a larger framework, not the whole strategy. We can't expect it to do all of the things. The nervous system regulation, the consistent meal timing, the microbiome rebuilding, the motility support. Diversity leads to resilience. The goal of every dietary decision in IBS-C should be moving towards more variety, not less, even if the path there requires temporary reduction first. That's the key. So here's what I would love for you to take from this video. The low FODMAP diet didn't fail you. It was just given a job it was never designed to do in the first place. It was given that job without the support systems that would have made it actually work. Used correctly, temporarily with proper reintroduction as one layer in a broader approach that addresses your nervous system, your microbiome, your motility, and your gut rhythm. It's genuinely a useful tool. Used as a permanent diet without reintroduction, however, without addressing root causes, without rebuilding what restriction depleted, it quietly makes IBS-C harder to resolve over time. Because here's the truth, you deserve more than a permanent list of foods to avoid. You deserve a gut that can handle real life. And that is completely achievable. It just requires a different framework than restriction alone. So if you're ready to understand what IBS-C actually needs, beyond just what to eliminate, I have 2 free resources to help you out. The first is a free training called Still Bloated and Backed Up, and it walks you through 3 gut rhythm mistakes I see most often in women with IBS-C and chronic constipation, and exactly what to do about them. The link is at the top of the description. And my gut clarity quiz is linked right below it. This is a simple 2 to 3 minute assessment that helps break down what your next step could actually be. And after either one, if working together on a personalized plan feels like the right next step, you can book a gut clarity call with me directly. If this video gave you a different way to think about a diet you've been following for a long time, give it a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video in this series. It helps more women with IBS-C and chronic constipation find this content. And if you know someone who's been strictly low FODMAP for months or years without a clear path forward, send her this video. And if you haven't watched video 4 yet in this series, the 5 IBS diet mistakes, it's in the playlist and it goes hand in hand with everything we just covered.